What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and it is match reaction time. And unfortunately, not an overly positive one today. It's going to be kind of hard to find some positives, and I usually try to do my best to try and extract some positives out of any given game of football, win, lose, or draw. A little bit harder off the back of a pretty rough loss to the Brisbane Lions on a night that was meant to be a night of celebration for Paddy Dangerfield's 350th, for Tyson Stengel's 100th, and even the whiteout that we were doing. But instead, things didn't quite go to plan for the Cats this weekend. Going down to the Lions, 14-8-92 Brisbane to Geelong's 6-15. Woefully inaccurate, 6-15-51. Brisbane flipped the script on their inaccuracy. Geelong flipped the script on their hyper accuracy, and that almost did it. That was almost it there in a nutshell. But there was two very different teams playing from what we've seen recently, and things just did not work out very well for the Cats. We'll explore the worm here. Brisbane got the early jump, and honestly, for the most part, that was where a lot of the damage was done. This run of consecutive goals here that was finally kind of ended late with the Shannon Neal goal. The tone was already set. Brisbane's tails were up. They were confident. They were kicking straight. They got, there was some ill-disciplined moments. One from Bailey Smith that led to a 50-meter penalty for Levi Ashcroft, which kind of got their first goal of the game. Now, of course, their inaccuracy has been an issue lately. He got taken straight to the goal square. Easy goal. You can't miss those. And instantly, okay, we're ahead of the ledger. We're tracking well. Like, it was poor discipline on a few occasions from the Cats that led to 50s, that led to goals. Cam Rayner got up and about. Kai Lohman, who's been struggling for form, got up and about. Charlie Cameron, who didn't kick any goals on the night, but you could see signs of him starting to find some touch again. Dangerous signs for the competition, with Brisbane finding a little bit of touch last night. And of course, Geelong would be the team responsible for giving him that a little bit of form. But anyway, second term arm wrestle, third term again, things kind of got away. Brisbane kind of controlled the first and the third, and controlled the game as a result. And Geelong just couldn't hit the scoreboard properly to build their own momentum. Jeremy Cameron did what he could. He kicked 4 goals and was fantastic for the Cats. But everyone else, it was a pretty lackluster performance, to be honest. The worm tells you all you need to know about the game there in a bit of a nutshell. But we're going to get into the rest of the game. We'll talk about some stats. We'll talk about some key players, some team stats as well, some individual stats, after a word from our sponsor, Cyril Cook Florist.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, let's get into some of our team stats here. And I guess the big observation for me that I'm curious, as we're about to scroll through it, to see if the stats kind of highlight and support, is that I felt this was a pretty standard game in a lot of ways. Opposition teams turn the ball over and there's opportunities to rebound and take advantage of that. And the problem for Geelong was last night is that we didn't take advantage of those opportunities on rebound. Brisbane, on the other hand, did. Geelong, I think it was during the second or third quarter, we'd scored 2 behinds from turnovers, which was a mile down on what we typically get, regardless of who the opposition happens to be. So it was pretty poor in that respect. And, you can see a lot of these numbers here as we start to scroll through it, then also reflects the fact that Geelong we're not a high possession team, but we couldn't get our hands on the ball. 314, then 30 disposals short of our average. Kicks and handballs down on averages. Brisbane, on the other hand, controlled the ball, controlled the momentum, and played a really, really good game. Inside 50s favoured the Lions. Disposal efficiency, usually one of our greatest strengths, was well down on average. Brisbane's well up on average. Efficiency inside 50 was good. When we got it there, we did what Geelong does so well. And again, large props to Jeremy Cameron in that respect, who was hyper efficient inside 50 with his 4 goals, and they were all hard fought, well earned goals on his part. He played a really great game and continues to show why he's the best forward in the game right now. The free kick count, I'm actually stunned that's equal. That must have leveled up quite late because, geez, Brisbane were getting the rub of the green at different stages. Now, it's not the reason why they won. Not even remotely close. We played an abysmal game of football. but I'm actually shocked. Brisbane were getting some absolute howlers and some non-calls that kind of fit the bill as well. Awful game from the umpires. Maybe Geelong should be doing what Freo does and posting their faces on the walls and going, know these blokes, schmooze these blokes. Anyway, hit out. Look, Reece Stanley was solid enough in the ruck, but I think really could have, and we'll talk more about when we look at the stats side of it in a while, really could have capitalised on his strengths in this game that Darcy Fort does not have. And kind of made Darcy Fort look all right in the end. Clearance numbers were pretty even in the end, but there was some stages, especially early on, when it really counted that Geelong were getting smashed in that regard. Statistically, sure, we balanced it out, but when it counted, we failed. Turnovers, I mean, for both teams, it was a high turnover game. The intensity of the game was quite high. The defensive pressure, the pressure ratings, all those things were great from both teams. But Brisbane was far better on turnover than we were. We turned the ball over and we'd turn it straight back over again. And there was quite a few scenarios where we'd get the ball, we'd get it in a really dangerous spot, or Brisbane would get the ball in a dangerous spot. We'd turn it over. They'd make an error and turn it over. We'd get the ball back, and then we'd give it straight back to them. And all of a sudden, our defenders who've taken off are now caught a mile away from their opponents. And Brisbane got some really simple goals as a result. The stats here kind of highlight all of that. Possession, marks, everything here is pretty. If you've applied the eye test to this game, the stats pretty well highlight it all. Geelong woefully inaccurate. Spent 1 minute and 50 seconds in front in this match, and that was early in the first, and then never looked a chance after that. So massive congratulations to Brisbane on the win in that regard and all that they did. Tackle count, the pressure just wasn't there. This tackles inside 50. This has been one of our great. I've spoken about it so much in the last week alone. This has been one of our greatest assets and skill sets this year. There's going to be a lot of people paying fines at the Geelong Football Club this week after Jeremy Cameron spoke about it the other day, because this was abysmal. We just couldn't lay hands on anyone. We couldn't stick a tackle. It felt like we were just chasing all day, but never getting close to anyone. It was awful. Bounces, 1%ers, kind of irrelevant stats at this point. So let's get into some of the individuals here. And this is potentially where we're going to get a bit more scathing, I would say. Disposal count, look, 28 for Bailey Smith, 23 for Max Holmes. They were both leading the game for a good chunk of time. I don't know how that finished in the end. But pretty ineffective, 28 and 23, I would say, for the most part. This was far from their best games. I don't see Brownlow votes coming towards either of these two. Tom Stewart did what he could. And what you'll notice as we start to look through this, Tom Stewart, Jack Martin, who's been spending a fair bit of time in defence, a bit more in midfield this weekend, Connor O'Sullivan, Lawson Humphreys, Jack Henry with far more than what he would usually get. Defenders are getting a lot of the ball. The ball spent a lot of time up that end of the ground. Really, there's not too many players I want to pump up. I've obviously already spoken about Jeremy Cameron. Tom Stewart did a good job. I need to make sure I recognize the Axe, who just did not relent all night. He was trying and doing all he could to drag the team with him, but he just didn't have enough support. 8 clearances from him, 6 tackles, 21 disposals. It was a really good effort. Some ill-disciplined moments. Things just weren't clicking for the Cats on the night, and he did all he could to try and arrest that momentum, but it just wasn't working. He just didn't have anyone to come with him. Danger did what he could, at different points. 3 behinds from him. The inaccuracy, again, we've spoken about, that came back to bite us. Jack Martin with 2 behinds, mostly simple behinds, fairly straight in front. Danger, not great on his part either in his big milestone night. Shannon Neal with 1 goal, 2. Just opportunities missed over and over. And then lots of players that just didn't impact the game. Zach Guthrie was well taken out of it. Mark O'Connor, I'm not too concerned about those numbers-wise, but didn't really clamp down like we needed him to on either a McCluggage or someone like that. Brad Close had a pretty ordinary game. He's not having an amazing season so far. Ollie Henry did a bit with the time he spent on the ground. Came on and really tried to throw some size around and use his skill set and his freshness. I thought he was solid, but I don't know if this does anything to ensure that he remains on the list when the likes of Sam de Koning, etc., come back. We're going to need to see more from Ollie. There was a circuit breaker opportunity, but the ball, the game was gone. And so Ollie, for all that he tried to his best to contribute, he also didn't have anyone alongside him. So I don't think this helped his case. Sean Manor was well down. Reece Stanley, 26 disposals, but again, 26 hit outs. But I go to the disposal side. Like, he could dominate Darcy Fort just through his athleticism alone, and didn't utilize that asset whatsoever. Brian Myers had an abysmal day. We love Brian. I love Brian. My son adores Brian. Brian had an absolute nightmare day with some horrific turnovers. I'm scared to even check some of the advanced stats and see. Don't we have something for clangers? No, maybe not. But look, if we check the disposal efficiency, I'd imagine that's going to really highlight it. He was going at 60%, but some of those errors, the errors he did make, they were critical errors. They were really couldn't be much worse timing for some of those errors coming out of halfback. He tried to center it up. There were the things that work some days, and then yesterday, it just wasn't one of those days where it was working. Not to mention the fact that Brisbane was well and truly prepared for it. And I have to go back to giving Brisbane some credit in this scenario. Let's forget the stats now. I'm going to give credit to Brisbane where credit's due, because they were absolutely fantastic. They came with a plan in mind and executed it really, really well. They knew what Geelong's strengths were, and they knew how to, what they needed to target if they wanted any chance to win. They targeted those strengths of the Cats. They nullified those strengths of the Cats, and they got the win that they very much deserve. So congratulations to Brisbane on the win. Geelong, we've now got a week off going into a bye next weekend. And then I think it's Richmond after the break. So an opportunity to kind of get our tails back up again. I've mentioned this. The top 2 thing is absolutely still on the table. We've got one genuinely tough game for the rest of the season against the Giants. If we can win that one and then, kind of win everything else that we shouldn't expect it to win, we could go into the finals still without, from this point on, without a loss. And be in a good place. I don't want to cast it an overly doom and gloom thing. This was absolutely one of those blip on the radar days. Not a good one from the Cats. Lots to reflect on. It felt like we did just kind of stick to the same game plan for a little bit too long, which has been a problem that Geelong's had over the years. But we'll rebound. We'll be back. They're going to get 2 weeks to kind of lick their wounds and come back and try and smash the Tigers, smash the Giants, and then let's see where we can go from there with an assault on the finals. Thank you, everyone, for having watched this video. It's a bit of a somber one. The tone sucks. Losses suck. But we'll be back. I have no doubt about it. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to the Hoops Crew on YouTube, like the video, share it with your friends and family, get the word out there about all the content we're creating from myself, Ben, and the chaps. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/thehoopscrew. There's early access content, exclusive content, and extended content there for you to enjoy. Go check out all that we've got there. There's a 7-day free trial. And if you like it, it only costs $5 to extend that support on a monthly basis. $5 per month. You'll find me on socials at Paul James Games. That's Instagram, that's Blue Sky, and that is Twitter. The Hoops Crew is at The Hoops Crew. And until next time, a shame about the result last night. A shame that we couldn't respect Paddy Dangerfield a little bit more with a greater effort. But props to the Lions. They're a fantastic team. They are the reigning premiers for a reason. We'll be back. We'll deal with them come finals time and hopefully get a win. And until then, remain Geelong strong. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you later.